Good afternoon, all. I trust everyone is safe and well. Welcome to the beginning of another week in the Civil Designer Software Open Classroom series. Tuesdays are Survey and Terrain Day, and today we welcome back Andrew Cole. Please remember that all our past webinars can be found on www.civildesigner.com in the Services section under FAQ videos. And please feel free to use the text chat service on your GoToWebinar floating dialog today to ask us any questions you may have during Andrew's presentation. So, good afternoon, Andrew. Please take it away.
Good day and welcome to today's Survey and Terrain webinar. In today's webinar, I'll be looking at intelligent line or Intelli-line triangulation, and then also some cut-fill shading for DTM surfaces. The Intellilines triangulation is a powerful design tool as it allows you to first add lines between specifically named points, thus allowing you to first define the features in your model. To demonstrate how Intelli-lines works, I'm going to be using this survey that was done for a road rehabilitation contract. Okay, so I'm using the L shortcut key to launch the visible layers dialog, so I can set the current layer only visible. The current layer is the 0 layer, which is the layer that the DTM data is displayed on. Okay, then I'm also just switching my triangulation lines on. As you can see, this survey is already triangulated, and you can see the center line points, the yellow line points, the edge of road are already all joined up neatly. So that's going to be our aim, is to get our triangulation to join up those specifically named points like the center line. Okay, I'm just switching all the CAD on again, so using that L shortcut for visible layers again, and making all the CAD layers visible. Then I'm changing to my terrain application. I'm going to remove all the break lines. So these are actually my break lines, and I'm using a filter just to delete all the break lines on surface number 1 or my natural ground, which is my surface 1. Okay, so I just switched on the CAD, so we've got a background to see how those points are positioned. So you can see the surveyors picked up the center line, the edge of road, a point on the yellow line, and then your banks, those drains, cut and fill areas on the sides of the road, and the fence as well. Okay, so just switching off the CAD once again so we can focus in on our triangulation. So if I use the normal model Triangulate, the normal Triangulate is just going to randomly join up the points, so create the break lines, but it's not looking at any specific point names. So the model Triangulate just zooms to the whole site. So I'm just going to zoom into this predefined zoom area again. And can you see that the normal triangulation hasn't joined up the edge of road to edge of road or yellow line to yellow line? So if you are working on a rehabilitation, you won't be getting the correct levels. From full to full, you want those lines, for example, to be running straight through. Instead, it's connected the closest point when creating those triangles. Okay, so I'm just going to go remove the triangulation lines again. So I'm going to model break lines and remove all again. So I'm going to remove the break lines, and then we're going to try the intelligent line triangulation, just using that filter to specify surface 1 again. So we want to now have a look at the Intellilines triangulation, and we need to get a distance, a maximum line length to use in our intelligent line triangulation. So I'm just using the Q shortcut key just to measure from center line to center line. So it's about 11 meters. So generally the rule is to use about 1.5 times the length between your points. I can maybe do from fence point to fence point. So also under 12 meters. So I'm going to use a maximum line length or search distance of about 15 meters when it needs to join from one point to the next closest specifically named point. Okay, so I'm just going to display settings and I'm just changing my text size. So remember the draft text keeps the text size the same size regardless of your magnification. So I'm just setting it to an absolute size now so that if we do the triangulation, and I'm going to run the intelligent line triangulation on the whole site. As a rule, the Intellilines only works on the visible portion, so what's visible on your screen. Okay, and then just switching my CAD on, I'm using that L shortcut key for the visible layers again. So I want to run the Intellilines, so it's model, the model pull down menu, Intellilines. Okay, the Intellilines allows you to run 4 passes, but you can run this as many times as need be. I'm just setting that 15-meter maximum line length. So that's the search distance that it'll look for points to join to, those specifically named points that it's going to look in a radius around each point. Okay, so I'm using 15 meters. I'm going to do 3 passes initially, the CL, the center line, the yellow line, and then the edge of tar points. You can have up to 4 points joined, 4-point names per pass, and then you can also have names that you want to exclude. That could, for example, be a manhole invert level that you don't want to include in your triangulation of your natural ground. Okay, and then you have an option here to keep existing lines or delete. Those are existing break lines, specifically break lines. The new lines that we're creating can be break or feature lines. The feature lines are just slightly more important or have a higher priority in the model. And you've also got the option of using that fence to only do the Intelli-line triangulation inside that fenced area. Okay, so it's run those 3 passes. I'm just going to refresh, S to refresh, and then we can go have a look at what's been done. I'm just going to zoom into that predefined zoom name viewport of mine. That is my zoom hotkey number 1, and then just switching the CAD off so we can see which lines have been created. So you can see the center lines, the yellow line, and the edge of tar have all been joined up. If I run that Intellilines again, we can run the points just to the outside. So I'm going to do the full, the toe and bottom bank, then the cut and the fence. I think we can join up the F point as well. So keeping existing and then new lines as feature lines. And just S to refresh. So remember, this is only on the visible portion of my screen. So it's only done those new lines between the full, the toe, and the cut and the fence, only on the visible portion of my screen. Okay, so I still have to run it on the whole site. So I'm just going to keep those same settings and now run the Intellilines on the whole site. I just did that first one just to test to see how it linked all that up for us. Okay, and then to run the whole site, there are 1 or 2 little gaps that we can see, but generally the Intellilines have done a good job and pretty much automated the triangulation of the feature lines in this model. Without the Civil Designer Intellilines functionality, it could literally take days to define the features on a big survey. So it really is a nice function to have access to. Okay, I'm just going to run it once more. I'm just resetting and I'm running those top banks, so TB and then the 15-meter search distance and then also that toe point that those lines were also missing. So let's just run it for those, creating feature lines again, and OK. Okay, so you can see it running those two passes. There are pens that you can set in the option settings. Okay, so looking a lot neater. There are a few little gaps here. Um, we could run a combination there, so we could possibly run with a single pass, for example, the toe and the toe BB points to join those up. But I'm not going to do that now. I think we'll just cancel out of that, and then I'll just manually go to the break line adding or feature line adding. So these are feature lines in this case. So we can just go to that terrain lines toolbar, and I'm adding feature lines. Okay, so it's the terrain lines toolbar, adding a feature line. The snap, it automatically snaps to the closest point, but I've just taken the gravel snap just to be safe, or just to show you visually where we are snapping to. Okay, and then that toe point there to that toe point. So some of those we could have run with the combination. So in a single pass, we could have different names to join up as well. But there you can see that Intellilines has done a good job, saved us a lot of time and effort. So what about the rest of the triangulation? We still need to do the triangulation between our feature lines. So to do that, I'm going to run the model triangulate, so just the normal triangulation. And in memory, so just from the computer's memory, and then maximum line length, going to use 25. The triangulation, the normal model triangulate, redraws to the whole site and does the triangulation for the whole site. So there you can see, looks pretty neat. If I zoom into the top of the site there, you can see if I change my draft text and make the text a bit bigger, 4 millimeters, keep it the same size, and then just my line styles, you can see my break lines, I had them as continuous lines just to make it a bit clearer. I'm going to set it down to the dashed or hidden line. The guys that have been using Civil Designer for longer prefer those smaller dashed lines for the break line display. Depending on your maximum distance that you allow for the triangulation, sometimes you get those lines jumping across the corners. So just to tidy that up, I'm going to use the remove feature or remove break lines icon on that terrain lines toolbar. So I'm just removing the break lines, and then the other two are feature lines. So remove feature lines, and then just click on them, and then S to refresh, or as soon as you move it'll refresh. So you can still tidy up your model a bit, but you can see the Intellilines have done a very good job. Okay, so I'm going to be moving on to the cut full shading section of the webinar. So I'm just changing to that previous pond platform project of mine. So we're going to do some cut full shading for the platform, and it's this display settings now. There's a new cut full shading section in the display settings. And how do you get that cut full shading? It's generated from a different surface. So under terrain, there's a new function, different surface. And if I select to run that, it also requires a DTM grid. So you need to generate the grid using the DTM grid volumes function, just like the drainage or the neutral contours, DTM grid contours. Okay, so I'm going to use a grid, and it's a ground and design difference grid. So it's the difference between the ground and the design surface. So in this case, we're using the ground as base earthworks, and then my platform 1. I'm going to set a grid of 1 meter. If I preview that, you can see there's 40 by 40 grids in those bigger blocks. That's just the containment area. These are just search distances for the program to calculate the levels for the grids. Okay, so it's running through that containment grid block area. I don't really need to be concerned with the volumes. I just need the grid to generate the cutful shading. So I'm going to go back to terrain and run that difference surface function now. So it's generating a surface, a separate surface. So I need to select which surface I want to put that new difference surface. So it's the difference between the ground and the design surface. And I'm just putting it on empty surface 32. You can see it's successfully created this new surface for me. Okay, so now I could go back to display settings and back to that new cut full shading display setting. So I'd switch it on, it's automatically picked up that different surface that was created. So basically it's a form of height shading. Your blue would be the cut, the white is the zero value, and then the red is the full areas. So blue is values that are less than zero because you're below the ground level, and then the red is the full area because you above the ground surface, so positive values. Okay, so I'm just running that. I'm using that gradient shading, so it's using varying gradient shading across the cut and fill areas. If I go back to display settings, I'm just going to move it off to the side so we can have a look at that shading. So you can see the blue values, the negative values is your cut, and then the positive would be the full areas. So the design surface there is above the ground, so it's positive in the full areas. Okay, then there is an option, let me just show you in the display settings as well, to set that cut full shading without the gradient colors. So it's not a gradual color across, it's just a solid blue, red, and white. The white being the change from cut to full. Okay, so I'm just going to switch that cut full shading off, and then I want to show you a variation on this when we run the terrain terrace volume. So I'm just going to my CAD layers and I'm adding a new cut full areas CAD layer. I've inserted it into the layer settings. Okay, and then I'm going to run that terrain terrace volume. So just the normal terrace volume function. And between my ground, which is that base earthworks, and my platform, snap on the terrace point. So if you have multiple terraces, just identify which one you're working on. You can set compaction, topsoil stripping. I'm going to use a nice small grid interval because it uses CAD points. I want to show quite a few CAD points, and we're outputting this to that new CAD layer, cut and fill areas. You can set the colors that you want to use to shade the cut and fill areas, and then you can set the volume bands. I'm just going to change it to, it's not that deep, so I'm going to make it 0.5 so we can see a few more bands in the cut full volume output. You can also use the cumulative prism output option or the contour bands option. So this cut full shading is creating CAD points that you could switch on and off in a CAD layer, but the previous cut full shading, the newer one, uses the display settings, so you could toggle it on and off in the display settings. And then finally, for today's webinar, I just want to create a table in one of my layouts. So I'm just selecting all the output data, the terrace volume information, and I'm going to create a table in one of my layouts. In this case, I'm just going to do a straightforward copy and paste into my paper space layout with my setting out data for that platform we designed previously. It doesn't have the white background, so I'm just going to go into the properties and check that full background checkbox. to white out the background behind the table. And then if I select in my viewport, in the layout viewport, and right click, I can set the visible layers. So that cut full shading layer hasn't been set visible automatically, so I'm just switching it on. And there you can see the cut and full shading with the table. So it's nice to give this to your contractor with the cut full shading and the terrace volume table. And that's a nice variation on the cut full shading, and that's all I've got for today. Cheers.
Thank you, Andrew. That was fantastic. And thank you to all who attended today. See you all tomorrow at the same time and place using the same link, where Cameron will be back with a roads design class. Take care and goodbye for now.